One of the greatest lies, indeed blood libel of our generation, are those who delegitimize Zionism and say Zionism has got nothing to do with Judaism. How is it connected to Jewish tradition and Jewish destiny? As if it's some militaristic nationalist endeavor which defiles religious values or universal values. It is not truly part of Judaism. What a lie. What a blood libel aimed at delegitimizing and destroying the one and only Jewish state in our ancient homeland. Of course, Israel is not perfect. Which country is? Not everything this or that government does is perfect. That is obvious. But to undermine the very right of the Jewish people to sovereignty and self-determination in our own land, in the ancestral homeland of the Jewish people, is absolutely ridiculous. There is not another country or people on earth which has got a deeper connection to a land over so long than the Jewish people to the ancient land of Eretz Israel. Here I am in the Ben-Gurion room, a historic room of the World Zionist Organization, where so many important meetings took place at the nascent state of Israel in the beginning of the declaration of the state. And you know who understood this so well? Ben-Gurion. People who say Ben-Gurion was secular. Yes, he wasn't fully religious in the traditional sense, but he was so deeply Jewish. And he expressed it exactly 90 years ago in the Peel Commission. You know, you may remember the violence that erupted in the land did not start with the Jews. The Jewish people returned the pioneers to purchase land and to settle a malaria-infested land. But many of the locals would not accept it. Hajj Amin al-Husseini unleashed the beginning of Palestinianism, not the right of the locals to their own country alongside a Jewish country, but the absolute denialism of anything to do with Jewish sovereignty anywhere in the country, anywhere, on any morsel of land from the river to the sea. And what happened? In 1936, 90 years ago, the Arab revolt for 3 years unleashed so much pain and suffering, death and destruction. And then the British mandate, the empire sent here, Lord Peel, a commission. What are we going to do about finding a way to share the land? Of course, already then, the Jewish people reluctantly, but they were prepared to share the land. And the Arab local civilians and neighbors were not prepared to. The revolt unleashed. And Ben-Gurion famously came before the Peel Commission. And what was his claim to the land? His claim to the land was ancient, Jewish and historic, and deeply rooted in Pesach. We're about to go to Pesach, to Passover. And what are we going to do? Famously says Ben-Gurion, he says, you people from the British Empire, one of the most important events of history for both Britain and the United States was the Mayflower, which 300 years before had arrived in the United States. How many American children know the date that the Mayflower left or the date that it arrived? Do any of them know who the captain of the Mayflower was, said Ben-Gurion, or what they ate? Ask almost any Jewish child that when the Jewish people left Egypt, they know when it was on Pesach, the 14th, 15th of Nisan. What did they eat? We know what they ate then, the matzah, the unleavened bread, because that's what we eat today. The story is alive. We know who led them, Moses. Who doesn't know the name of Moshe Rabbeinu, of Moses? The Jewish story is one, says Ben-Gurion, which begins in Pesach and is given over for every generation. That is what our claim to the land is. Because then in Pesach, when we were leaving, we were on our way to the land of Israel. We left Egypt, the land of our bondage, received the Torah at Mount Sinai, on the way to the land of Israel. And even then, Pesach, the birth of the Jewish people, was connected to a journey to the land of Israel, the land of Canaan, which became Israel, and of course, the receiving of the Torah. Judaism, our values, the birth of the Jewish people, and the connection to the land goes back 3,300 years, and even more if we go back to Abraham. This ceremony of the Pesach Seder and the Haggadah, says Rabbi Sachs, is the most ancient of all religious ceremonies, and is as ancient as it is current. Zionism is the desire of the Jewish people to return to their ancestral homeland, and Pesach is the beginning of that journey of return after the first exile. May we all stand up proudly today and know that the right of Jewish self-determination in the land goes back thousands of years, and it is inherently connected to the Jewish story. It is part of our religious mission. It is part of our universalistic mission. You cannot sever universalistic Judaism or religious Judaism from the core of the national story of the Jewish people, not to deny anyone else rights, but to maintain, reclaim, and return to the most ancient right that the Jews have had since the dawn of their history when we came out of Egypt. The right to live in freedom, to receive our values, the Torah, and to return to the land of Eretz Yisrael. Shabbat Shalom. Chag Sameach.